So, good afternoon, San Diego. This is Vince Scuncio, the attorney's realtor, and today's episode of Inside the Law. Today, I have two special guests with me. One is Jenny Erdman with Guide My Finances, and the other special guest we have today is Genna Palecek, right, with PMA Law. Thank you, ladies and folks, for coming in today.
Thanks for having us, Vince.
Thank you. I'm excited.
So am I. So because Jenny Erdman is a certified financial planner, and because they have certain, what would you call it?
Rules and regulations with my licenses.
So I'm going to bore you for the next 20 seconds as I read this disclosure that securities offered through the Securities America Incorporated, a registered broker-dealer, member of a FINRA SIPC, and advisory services offered through Securities America Advisors Incorporated, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. Guide My Finances is not an affiliated entity of the Securities America Companies, California Insurance License 0H00729. Okay. So we got that out of the way. Thanks for letting me do that for you, Jenny.
No, thank you.
All right. So before we get too much further involved, I did tell my beautiful granddaughters, Lily in London, that I would give a shout out to them. So, hi, babies. Grandpa says hi. And yes, I'm that old enough to have grandchildren. And
you don't look it.
I know, right?
No, you really don't.
Really
we need video.
Well, I'm told I have a great face for radio. So, Jenny, first of all, thank you guys for coming on the show. And I want to share a story of how you and I first met. Like I'd mentioned, Jenny is a financial advisor, and she has a kind of a unique spin, which we'll get into a little bit more on the show here, which separates her from probably 99% of the other financial advisors in town. When Jenny and I first met, we met at a Starbucks, just kind of talking. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think it was, 2.5, 3 years ago? We were both kind of still building our business.
Yeah, and so, you get some interesting people at Starbucks, but it's not as bad as Walmart.
I'd like to say, though, this was the Starbucks in Del Mar.
It was a Starbucks.
We weren't expecting exactly what happened.
Yeah, so we're sitting there, we're having our coffee, we're talking, we're trying to, say, how can we do some business? And Jenny keeps looking at me going, what are you staring at? Because behind her, this guy is just dropping down doing push-ups in Starbucks, which... Okay.
Well, I don't know if you're painting the picture of his outfit quite right, because that was an interesting thing too.
Yeah, I still have that seared in my brain, but that was our first meeting. So here we are 2.5 years later on the radio and reminiscing in good times. Good times. So Jenny, tell me a little bit about you. Tell me about Guide My Finances, and yeah.
Okay, I am a certified financial planner. Our company does three main things. We do hourly financial planning, and that can be anywhere from about 3 hours to ongoing consultation services you need. We also do asset management and protection, so that's the typical, stocks, bonds, mutual funds. And then I have a subspecialty in divorce planning, which is one of the things actually Vince and I share as well. We both are in the divorce marketplace. And so what that means is if you're getting a divorce, if you're thinking about a divorce, you probably really want to talk to someone about your assets. The division of them is supposed to be done in very specific ways when it comes to divorce. And so that's about a third of my business as well. And it's really interesting. I think Vince already mentioned it, but one of the main things that really separates me, and I'm proud of, I guess I should say, is that I am an attorney. I have an active bar license. I do not draft. I do not give what I would call legal advice. I'll leave that to people like Genna Palecek. But it does help a lot, especially in the divorce market space. And if there's any sort of estate planning and gift planning going on with our financial plans, it's something that has helped me out indefinitely with my business. Very good.
And then Genna, right?
Yeah.
So I got Jenny and Genna today, and I think my guest just set out to tongue-tie me anyways. Genna is an attorney, and is it your father's firm?
No, it's actually my firm, and my father had a different firm in town for 40-plus years, but he is our what's called of counsel.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about you. Tell me about your firm. And
yeah, so I have a estate planning and corporate law firm here in the Del Mar area. My law partner, Caroline Morrison, we are both co-owners of the firm.
Okay.
And we practice, those specific two areas of law only. So our corporate side is basically like an outsourced in-house counsel. So what we like to say is everything from the startup to the breakup of companies. And then, on our estate planning side, we do obviously wills and trusts, trust administration, and probate.
Okay. And so how do you two work together? Tell me a little bit about how you two know each other, because these two are like two peas in a pod.
Yeah, it's a little sad. We actually met kind of similar circumstances through work a couple years ago. Jen, do you want to share?
Yeah. So
there's dating involved.
Yeah,
and
there was
broken
dating.
hearts
Not each other.
Not each other, no.
So I actually interviewed right out of law school for the company that Jenny was working for.
I started at a very large company.
And then ended up, I went into the law side and not the financial planning side, but, I like both, and that's why I do estate planning. But it ended up that we were introduced through Jenny's boss, and we became super good friends.
Well, it seems to be a natural, relationship, having a family law attorney, having somebody who's specialized, like my practice, my business as a realtor, I specialize in working with family law attorneys and people that are going through divorce or bankruptcy or something like that. And so it seems like a natural pairing.
Yeah, you definitely want to work with professionals, one that you like, which we like each other almost maybe too much sometimes, too much fun. But also, too, you have those commonalities, like you said, you want to work with people that are going through some sort of transactional change. So bankruptcy, family law, estate planning. And that's kind of us. A lot of our clients are similar in that there's either some sort of change that's prompted some estate planning, some sort of business planning, or some financial planning. And a lot of times real estate comes into play as well, as you know.
Okay. Yeah. Very good. Sorry, I was the guy in the booth that was waving me on, but he's not. So I got my ADD kicked in. I saw a squirrel. And I just told him off. I could tell a funny story about my fiancée Stacy and I, but I won't embarrass her on the air. So one of the things I do like is, and what I did mention, Jenny, is being an attorney. I talk to a lot of different family law attorneys, probably, a couple hundred attorneys a year that I know and meet with, and financial advisors as well. And very rarely do I run into a financial advisor that has a law degree. And I'm assuming that in Jenna's business, you work with other financial advisors because they're not always going to come, without somebody.
Exactly.
When working together, how's that beneficial to work together as a team where you have a law degree, even though you're not a practicing attorney? And do you ever find that there's any kind of conflict with that, or?
Well, we haven't had any conflicts. I'll be honest, there have been conflicts in the past with other attorneys and myself, not, nothing crazy, not like shouting on the phone or something, but where the attorneys sometimes will recommend something that I may not have from the financial perspective side, which doesn't necessarily make it wrong. And I think, I don't know, Jen, have you had this similar thing where maybe the financial planner is suggesting something that from the legal perspective that may not be what you think they should do?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I get that all the time. I mean, there's so many times where a financial planner doesn't understand certain legal aspects, and they might think that they do, and then they've told the client maybe something that is partially misinformed that I have to go back and correct and kind of re-educate both parties, the financial planner and the client, which is always difficult because they've
sent you business.
A tight rope to walk, so to speak.
Now you have to sort of correct them.
And so that's a little bit difficult, but I think for the benefit of the clients is really where it's at when you have a estate planner, for example, and a financial planner, or even a corporate attorney working with the financial planner on, buy sells or succession planning, anything like that, because it really gives the client the best of both worlds and the best service.
Right.
And you have a team that knows kind of what they're doing and are really on the same page.
Well, and a lot of times too, when you have the right kind of client, I'll even say, you know what, I should check with Genna because I don't know, I want to make sure my recommendation goes alongside with what she's doing on her end. And clients understand that. So you don't always have to give them an answer right away, but you definitely want to coordinate. If it's something complicated or something that there's a legal aspect to it, you want to coordinate. And so with us, it works really well because I can call her up and she can call me up and say, okay, this client came in with this. What is it? Or, how does this work?
Right.
Exactly.
And I see that a lot in real estate as well, because I work with a number of different attorneys in town. And, what separates me is the communication with the attorneys and the financial advisors. I see a lot in situations where when there's a divorce, you're separating assets, right? And so you have hey, we have a 401k, we have an IRA, we have whatever our financial assets are. I personally only deal with the real estate side as the agent. But, okay, so you're getting $200,000 from the sale of the home. What are you doing with that? Well, I don't know. And so, I find a lot of attorneys don't have that financial advisor on their team. And I don't want to generalize, but there have been situations where the attorneys, let's get you through a divorce. You can sell the house with whoever you want, and whatever you do with that money is fine. And that person may not be prepared for a large chunk of money all at once, may not be aware of the tax implications of keeping the home, vice refinancing it or selling it. And there's a lot there. So I like that, how you guys are set up as a team, even though I know you guys work independently. You have that friendship going, and you have that,
Yeah. And I think, too, to point out kind of your point is we do, as our own business owners, work with other professionals such as real estate people, CPAs, accountants. And it is really important. You did point out, I've been really impressed with Vince just because he does get that, there's a lot of these transactions that are going on that do need special counsel, whether it be an estate planning attorney or a divorce attorney or a financial planner. And I think that really sticks out because sometimes, with real estate people, they don't understand the intricacies, especially that divorce work. So I would like to say it does make a big difference to work with someone who understands the team philosophy.
And I didn't even pay for that plug.
No,
that
he
was
did
free.
not. That was an honest plug.
So, Jenny, you basically work. Jenny and Jenny.
It's okay.
And I keep calling her Jen. It's
Yeah,
really
so you guys are
helping.
just totally messing
Call
me
me
up.
Jen. It might help.
Jen, okay. Jen and Jenny. Good times. Well, like I said, I have two grandkids, London and Lily. And,
Oh, gosh.
That's hard too.
yeah, right.
That's a tongue twister.
You don't want to mess up grandkids because they know.
Yeah.
They'll remind you.
They will remind you, Grandpa. So you're primarily estate planning, though. I mean, that's what you really.
Yeah.
I know your firm does both, but
Exactly. I mean, I manage the estate planning side of our practice.
okay.
And my law partner manages the corporate side. So, I'm primarily kind of managing all those files, dealing with them. That's kind of my, that's what I like the best. So
Right.
that's how we've gravitated towards how we kind of manage which side of the
Very cool. Very cool.
practice.
Well, and also, too, there's a ton of overlap, right? I mean, with the business succession planning and things like that.
Certainly. I mean, when we went to figure out kind of where we were going to go with our practice, we thought that was so natural to be, we wanted to be transactional, but business and estate planning so overlap because our business clients need estate planning and succession planning. And kind of vice versa.
Well, after the break, we're going to talk a little bit more about some financial considerations and estate planning considerations. So please stay tuned after the break, and we'll be right back. All right, I know I'm not supposed to talk over the music, but I really like this tune. This is Vince Scunzio, the attorney's realtor, and welcome back to Inside the Law. Today I have Genna Palecek and Jenny Erdman. Genna is with PMA Law, and you can reach her at www.pma-legal.com, or you can call her at 858-771-0776. And Jenny, you can reach her at www.guidemyfinances.com, and she can be reached at 760-547-7585. So we talked about before the break, we were going to come back and talk a little bit about the death or disability of a loved one, and that's usually where a solid financial plan will come into play. So, Genna, tell me a little bit about family, I don't know if you know this, but my wife passed away several years ago. We had a trust. I always said that if I wasn't in real estate, I should be a real estate or an insurance salesperson because I absolutely get what it's like to lose a loved one and not have enough insurance on them. Okay. Mm-hmm. But I did have an estate plan, and we did have, all those trust documents set up, not as much in advance as I would have wanted. So, I could tell from personal experience, but tell me from an attorney's point of view, what are some estate planning considerations that people should take before they need it?
Certainly. Well, as everyone knows, California is in a budget crisis. And how that translates into estate planning is that, the courts are crowded, especially the probate court. Probate is what happens when you have a loved one that passes when you have no plan. Especially if you have assets over $150,000, which if you own a piece of real property in this state is highly likely that it's going to be over $150,000. So basically, our rule of thumb is anybody with a house needs a trust plan. And that is to avoid probate. Probate's very time consuming and very, very costly. A probate of $1 million can run you $25,000 in probate fees or more, and that's by statute versus paying $3,000 to get a trust plan done. So you basically everybody, regardless of age, we never know when we're going to go. There's two things in life that are certain: death and taxes, as the old adage goes. But the sooner the better. We could kind of go on and on about this.
Yeah.
What do you think, Jenny?
I've seen some disasters is what I've seen.
Certainly.
But I think too, the other thing, and I remind clients of this, the estate planning is not just the financial per se. It's not just if you have real estate. If you have children, and I think Vince, this is probably something you could really attest to. If you have children, or if you want someone to make end-of-life decisions for you in worst-case scenario, or if you are disabled and need someone to make medical decisions, Genna, maybe you can kind of talk about that, because that's the thing my clients really overlook.
Absolutely. Most people think a trust plan and all the related documents are just for money, but really they're for planning for all events that could potentially happen. Dementia, Alzheimer's, those statistics are going up. The baby boomers are getting older. At some point in time, it is highly likely that every American or a large percentage of them will not be able to make decisions for themselves. And you need those powers of attorney. You need those advanced healthcare directives to make the end-of-life decisions.
I can barely make decisions for myself.
Right? And keep in mind, what I see all the time are divorces, and you know what happens? People forget to update those plans.
I heard about that.
Yeah.
Could you imagine? I mean, I don't have a Crazy Ex, but could you imagine having that's like television show Crazy Ex, and all of a sudden that's the person that's responsible for pulling your plug?
Exactly. Well, I think Terry Schiavo might have something to say about that.
I have some.
It's crazy.
I have some bad horror stories that we won't get into.
No.
You got to tell one.
Okay, I'll tell one. Married couples in the middle of a very long, prolonged, drawn-out divorce. I think the divorce is going on 3-4 years, and husband in this circumstance randomly had a stroke and passed away. So technically, under the code, if you're in the middle or legally separated, you actually a spouse or an almost former spouse can't take as they would have under the code, but the plans hadn't been revoked. We had to go through a full probate. I mean, it was a nightmare.
How much did the probate, just ballpark, do you remember? Like how much that ran them?
Close to $50,000.
Jeez.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And on top of the fact that really, as soon as you sign a marital settlement agreement, you really need to immediately address your estate planning. I mean, you need to revoke the wills. You need to get the new will. You need to revoke the trust. Get everything out of the titling. There's always titling issues. We had houses in the name of this old trust that didn't actually exist, and then we had to go ask the court, how do we want to deal with this? We got somebody who's passed, and then an ex-spouse. So it was very complicated. It was truly a nightmare, and nobody wants to go through that. I mean, I can say one thing to all people attempting to get a divorce: that make sure you get your estate planning done right away. Don't wait.
Well, and even sometimes I'll recommend clients to do stuff in the middle of the divorce. So if you're separated from your spouse, and this is sort of getting off topic from, our businesses, but it's important. If your divorce is going to take 3 years, one of you could get hit by a bus during that 3 years.
And the other person's probably driving, right?
Well, yeah. But you might want to do some sort of intermediary, estate plan intermediate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I say once you're legally separated,
it's time. You got to do it.
And then you got to think of the guardianship considerations if you have minor children. That's guardianship is always done in the will. So, if you are wanting to choose guardians, if something were to untimely happen to you, that needs to be done right away.
I think from a consumer's perspective, I have my estate set up and everything like that, and it's such a daunting task from my point of view of saying, okay, I got to do an estate plan, and I don't know why. Maybe it's just my own bias or something like that, but I put it off for a long time, and then I basically had to. When my wife was really sick, I had to do something. And when the doctor tells you need to make sure your estate's in order, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then after she passed away, it was several years. I need to update my stuff. And when I went back, I have an estate attorney down here. Before I met you, so
thank you.
Sorry about that.
I'll hold
I
you
would
to
change it
that
in
one.
hindsight, right?
She does amendments, just so you know, for the future.
Well, I am getting married, so
There you go. There you go.
But I didn't realize, normally you think along those situations when someone is divorcing, but when someone passes away, you also have to amend everything because
Certainly.
crap, that stuff goes back. Oops, I almost got bleeped. That goes back. It can go back decades, and so it's obviously not as difficult as I have a perception of it being. When we're talking about those documents, how difficult of a process is that? Is that like a month-long process, or it's like get it done?
We try to make it as simple as possible, and the fact that I have people come in a lot of times and like we're going on an international vacation next week, and we're afraid because we're leaving our kids for the first time or whatever, and we can get those turned around before they leave on a trip. So it can take is up to just a week. Really, it takes me about an hour and a half to collect the information I need from the client. We get drafting and then we get it signed. So it really, I try to make it as seamless and as as painless as possible, because that is the perception that, and I think really what people may see as painful is, facing, okay, who would be my successor trustee? Where would I want my stuff to go? And, oh God, what would happen if something happened to me? That's kind of a hard thing to face.
Well, you got to name like 15 people down.
Yeah.
I mean, mine was, okay, brother, cousin, sister, what happens if your sister's brother's uncle? You're like, what?
Yes.
I mean, we're not all going to get on a plane together. And if we do, who cares at that point? It's
Right.
like we're all going to crash burn. But I
always say we plan for Armageddon.
Well, that's what lawyers do. You think you have every scenario down, and then you go talk to a lawyer, and you're like, I didn't think of that.
Well, that's why I usually don't have like attorney debates, because that can just turn into a gnarly conversation.
Debbie Downers.
Well, you two are fun, but yeah, you're right. And so how does that play into your side? You're helping someone with a plan, and then I'm assuming that you look at everything they have, and you say, hey, have you talked about...
Yeah, well, so a lot of planning that goes on with clients, most of it is the assets, or the part that I deal with is the assets. Not the guardianship or anything. One of the main things is simply titling. I've seen a lot of estate plans done, and they'll be in my office, and I'll look them over, and then I'll notice none of their accounts are in the trust like they're supposed to be. Now, not all accounts have to go in the trust, and that's something, that actually is another issue that comes up. There's things like IRA stretch planning. There's some accounts that don't go in the trust, IRAs, for example, but they can if there's specific planning to be done. So with us, when there's certain types of accounts, that's really when it comes up. And part of my plan when I sit down with clients is I do look at the titling just to see, okay, for instance, maybe a couple's come in and one of them was divorced 2 years ago, and they bring in their 401k information, and one of the beneficiaries is still the ex-spouse, so I see that all the time. And so that's sort of an estate planning issue, is we got to make sure the beneficiaries are updated. So yeah, that's how it plays in. Really, I just want to look at that titling. I want to make sure that if there's IRAs, if there's retirement accounts, where are they going? Are they going to go through probate? If we don't do something, are they going to go to the trust? Is the trust ready to take them? Because you have to design the trust a certain way. And that's Genna's field. I don't do that. I just say, hey, this might be a problem. But yeah, that's really where it comes up. Worst case scenarios are mostly what I deal with as far as catastrophes. So if one of the one person in the couple passes away early, that's when we have the, oh no, holy, oops, I don't know how to say it on the radio, but
all that without the end of the swear words.
Yeah, something hit the fan.
That's
I don't
when
have a bleep button over here.
that's when the financial planner really is going to help out, as far as, because basically we're planning for worst case scenario too. So someone gets hit by a bus and can no longer make income, we're going to plan for that. So.
Well, very good. So when we come back from the break, we're going to talk a little bit more about end-of-life planning. And I'm not trying to be a doggy downer today, but there are some actually good things that go on with a estate plan and a solid financial planner. So stay tuned after the break. All right. So, normally when you talk about estate planning and financial planning, everything like that, everyone's talking about, end-of-life planning, right? You were talking about when someone passes away, whoever it is, you or a loved one, or the eventuality, and that's kind of a doggy downer topic. I mean, it's opening day. We got to cheer it up a pinch. So, let's talk a little bit about the positives of a plan. I mean, really, what you're planning for is not to pay as much taxes and how to perpetuate wealth. And so, let's talk about the positives. Let's be happy. Let's do happy thoughts. So,
let's talk
fun.
About preserving money.
Yeah, and not paying more taxes than you need to.
Exactly. Our favorite two things to talk about.
Right?
especially a week before tax day.
Right?
Yeah, that's right. Oh, goodness. So, Jenny, you want to start?
Yeah, I guess I can start. So my job as a financial planner is to make sure we plan financially for basically not avoiding taxes. I want to be clear, we don't want to do anything illegal. We want to make sure we pay what we're supposed to pay. But there are definitely things as far as retirement planning, certain types of accounts that are tax efficient, things like that a financial planner needs to take into consideration. And then when you start to talk about estate planning, a lot of times with my clients, what we're talking about is how to transition those assets from what you're currently using in retirement to live on to your children or your grandchildren, whether it be through college planning, maybe some sort of gift planning. And that's kind of, that's really where Genna and I will shine, or an estate planning attorney and a financial planner will shine. It's our goal to make that transition as tax efficient as possible. But then also, you want to make sure you have enough money to live on today, but plan to pass it on in the future efficiently. So that's a really fun job for us, frankly, because you get to see both generations are going to benefit from that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that really is, what I consider, I always call estate planning like preventative medicine. You don't want to have to do the surgery, which is probate. Mm-hmm. The plan is preventative medicine. And so part of the really cool aspects of doing the plan is figuring out, what tax liabilities you might have, generational issues when money passes, how you're going to get your step up in basis, all that kind of cool, kind of dorky. When
it's
we
pretty
really
dorky.
Get into it.
The laws changed enough too to keep it. You kind of have to mix it up. So sometimes something will change, and maybe the step up in basis will go away, or maybe it won't. So we have to keep track of that. And if things change, we get to call our clients and do more planning, which sounds really dorky, but we like it.
Yeah, and it's really necessary. I mean, a lot of times we'll get a client who has, we were talking about triggering events on the first segment. It's always some type of triggering event. Somebody has gone through a probate, or somebody is inheriting money and they don't know what to do or plan, and that kind of drives them in the door to us. And we basically get to solve that problem or help them solve that problem through the planning process. So that's always good to give people peace of mind.
And I think the key to that, is because we've talked a little bit about probate, and I don't want to go off on that tangent because I'm ready to.
Sad again.
Well, yeah, but the thing is that you can either plan for it, or you want to plan for something before it happens via having to be reactive. So being proactive is you can do it on your timeline. You can do it as things change, right? As things change, like in my life, as I'm engaged, I'm going to get married next year. We bought a house last year. I have an escrow company as well that I own, and so those life events, my plan is constantly in flux, and I absolutely don't want to do your job. I'm not an attorney. I mean, I'm great at what I do. I wouldn't, and I can speak legalese, but I don't have the training, and I take my car to a mechanic,
Exactly.
and I get my oil changed because I've seized an engine. What do you mean that red light? And I'm not saying that's your new marketing strategy is see us before the engine light comes on, but
well, and I think actually one of the things Jenna and I were talking about during the break that just came up was the importance of a team strategy where you can avoid probate. So that's the goal, right? Is to avoid probate when you're
because
passing.
probate's no joke.
Yeah.
Number one.
And then, so what comes up is if you are avoiding probate, you're going to go through a process called trust administration. And that's simply just taking, and correct me if this is not a good description, Jenna, because you're the actual trust administrator. But what that process really is you've put everything in the trust, the right way, and now you've passed away and your plan is in effect taking place. And so the attorney basically starts to distribute the assets in the plan the way that the plan dictates. And one of the things that we've really found successful is someone like me can help with the asset distribution itself. Like I can take hold of the assets as the planner and then help work with the beneficiary. So that's been really helpful with people who want their plan to continue.
Definitely. Hopefully you have a well-funded plan. Plans are only as good as their funding. But once it comes down to it and the plan is operative and going to the beneficiaries, it's very helpful to have a financial planner who understands how to marshal the type of financial accounts and whatnot to work together as a team, because it's very beneficial to the client.
All right. Well, when we come back from this last break, we're going to talk a little bit about financial and estate planning overlap, and then we're counting down to the Padres home opener. So this is Vince Scuncio, the Attorney's Realtor, on ESPN 1700. All right, welcome back to Inside the Law with Vince Scuncio, the Attorney's Realtor. And before the break, we were talking about we're going to come back to financial and estate planning overlap. But we're going to change it up a little bit because we were talking during the break, and one of the fallacies that I run into in real estate is that most people think that they can't buy a house because they can't afford a house. And so, the first-time home buyer, I run into that all the time with a first-time home buyer. They just don't understand that process. And I remember back when I started investing, when I'd gotten out of the military, I was getting my little $96 a month in disability, and I just started investing it. And that's grown, I think that account's grown to about $20,000 over the years, which shows how long I've been out of the Navy. But so, real quick, we only have a couple minutes left, but Jenny, tell me, what does it take for somebody to get started with, a financial advisor? Then, we come over to Genna and talk, and I'm killing your name, I apologize, talk about what if I don't have an estate, so.
Yeah, so, getting started, let's just talk about getting started financially. The first thing you always want to do is sit down and think, do I have a plan? Whether or not you're working and living paycheck to paycheck, or if you have extra money, think about your cash flow considerations. Do you have extra money each month? Are you just spending it randomly? Are you putting it into a savings account? Simple things like that. You got to start somewhere simple, especially, if you're young and you're starting out in life. Manage your debt. If you have student loans, maybe you need to talk to someone about how they're structured or their payoff schedule. But really how you want to get started is just sit down and think, seriously, do you have a plan? If your stuff is pretty complicated, you'd probably want to go to an expert. Someone like me can sit down and talk to you about, here's what you're doing. If you tell me what your goals are, we can work together and try to get there. And also along the way, if things change, you want to monitor it. A lot of financial planners do have minimums as far as asset management levels. So, Vince, I got to say your $96 a month probably couldn't work with someone, to be honest. But that doesn't mean you can't open an E-Trade account or go on Vanguard or Fidelity and open an account up and do it cheaply until you build up your $20,000 or your $50,000. One of the main things, and since we're pretty short on time, I just want to make sure a lot of people out there that have 401ks, if you're in the military, you have a TSP, things like that. If you have a retirement plan through work, you really want to make sure you sit down and you look at that. That's where a lot of people miss the boat, especially with a 401k. If you have a match on there, sometimes you have a SEP or a simple. And that's something that you definitely want to talk to a financial planner about.
And so if somebody wanted to reach out to you on that, Jenny, what number would they contact you at?
They would contact me at Guide My Finances, and that's guidemyfinances.com. We just redid our website, so
Awesome.
feel free to go there and be critical because we're still updating a few things. And then my phone number is 760-547-7585. I'm extension 102, but you can call our operator or talk to Jackie, my partner. Either way, we can help you out. But essentially, yeah, where you want to get started is if you are employed and you work if you have an employer-sponsored plan, a 401k, a TSP, a Simple, a SEP, anything like that, get started there. That's really the easiest way.
And then as far as starting an estate plan, what constitutes an estate? Oh, we've got 2 minutes, so.
Okay, I'll be quick.
Dun, dun, dun.
Well, like I had started out with a little on the first segment, anything over $150,000 is subject to probate in the state of California. So anybody that has assets over $150,000, that is considered an estate that will go to probate. Every single person lives in the state has an estate plan. It's the one the state gave you.
Got it.
Okay,
Got it.
so if you don't want the one the state gave you, then you should
See an
do
estate
the one
planner.
Exactly.
Well,
do the one you want.
Yeah, so we're out of time. So I want to thank Genna Palecek with PMAlegal.com and Jenny Erdman with GuideMyFinances.com. Thank you, ladies, so much for coming in
Thank
today.
you.
I actually had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Tune in next week to Inside the Law. This is Vince Scuncio, the attorney's realtor, and go Padres.
Yay.
Go Padres.